we are. So let's just go into yesterday's price action, what I saw. So obviously, when we were going into here, there was the just a plain up SMT between two assets on the 4 hour time frame. 1 second. As you can see, there was this right here, along with this PSP earlier. It also was this sort of SMT. Just watching how asset wasn't sweeping into this fair value gap while this asset was running into this fair value gap. So it was like relative weakness and strength because this asset was weaker here but didn't run into this fair value gap. This asset was stronger but didn't run into this fair value gap. This asset was weaker and did run into this fair value gap. So that was my first sort of clue. Then we got to the hourly chart. I definitely wasn't as big placed on that hourly chart. We had that disclosure that made me a little bit bullish right here. Just order blocking or CSDing that. You'd want to see the support hold there. But overall, my draw in this stage is currently still going to be on YM because that's the strongest asset intraday. And you can see that this high right here is pretty much the draw because this is above all these relative equal highs. And this is a simple one inside of a fair value gap. So when I go down to the 5-minute chart, that's kind of my draw that I was assuming. But I knew that price is going to have to retrace. And the reason why is this is pre-market. This is pre-market. So you see this is pretty much all chop in my mind. So I'm like, market is definitely going to have one of these huge candles to manipulate a level so that we can expand from there. And what do we do at market open? Well, NQ is already displaced lower below these lows, so it just expands higher. Now, YM, which was weaker and stronger, well, it starts to retrace deeply and really fast. So when you look at equilibrium, we pull back to equilibrium. And we do so, I don't want to make it too complicated, or don't make it too noisy, the chart, but this asset is expanding. And so if we're expanding and we pull back, once this asset is still deep down in discount, I don't want to enter on this asset, even if it is the strongest asset, because what if this asset is not done retracing and it continues down to external liquidity and wants to retrace there? Well, this asset might just as well displace down to this external liquidity before we displace there. So one of the major things that I wanted to see first is I wanted to see this asset reverse, because that would mean that all assets are going to reverse. I put this kind of nicely, I think, yesterday in one of my Discord, talking to one of my buddies. So when YM displaces lower like that, even if I'm going to anticipate the higher move, it still makes me a little bit nervous because, let's go over here. It still makes me a little bit nervous to take this, even if, let's say, we CSD. So let's go over into 1 minute. And on this type of trade, where we haven't started to displace higher yet on YM, and YM has just displaced lower this whole market open. So I'm waiting for the reversal, but I don't want to just guess bottoms, right? I'm not going to take this CSD right here on this candle's entry, this wick, because of the fact that I'm iffy on the setup, and I don't want to take it on NQ, because if YM starts to reverse right here, NQ can turn weaker so that YM can catch up, because YM is lagging. So remember, in a strength switch, one asset is going to slow down. So I'm not saying that this happens every time, and I'm not saying I'm seen it that often, but this is just what Garrett's taught, is that if this asset, which is stronger and it's higher up in the range, if this asset is going to catch up to it, it needs to expand faster than this asset's going to expand. So you see, let's say both assets finish off with this level of expansion right here. But both assets did not start off like this. So you can see that is the strength switch right there that allows for it. And I just didn't want to be caught up in that. So let's go into my trade. My trade was literally just pretty much guessing a bottom. So it was watching resistance. I know that once price is going to run liquidity, it's going to be high resistance and it's going to be quick. Well, why? Well, because there's only literally two options here, or there's three. One is price does not move the whole day, which obviously we're not going to do that at market open, which is the highest volatility. Secondly is what I just talked about, where NQ becomes a little bit weaker so that YM can catch up, which will run the same idea on YM. This is why I'm taking it on YM. But my third idea here is that NQ should just continue to expand higher. Now Dow Jones, YM, we should expand way faster to it, right? Because we have pulled back all this way, so we've just loaded up the slingshot in my head to just boom, right, to bounce off of that and to go higher. And obviously, it doesn't always happen. So how I did this is I set my stop loss down at this body open, and then I set my my take profit order at our draw on liquidity, and then I went back to that 3-minute chart because I like, I'm not gonna rip a 5-minute chart, but 3 minutes not bad, and that's pretty much where my trade was. I put my stop loss down here, and it got to there so quick that I just got out there because that is my trade. That's my 2.6R. But as you can see, if we hop onto this 15-minute chart, which is like before the move even started, you probably can catch an SMT fill, as you can see right here. This is what I really love about the market. So if you did want to catch a continuation, you could have catch a continuation, especially on this SMT fill right here. And this just expands price higher, most likely, from the level. So yeah, that was pretty much yesterday. Now, going into today, let me remove some drawings. Let's exit this. Let's remove some drawings real quick. All right, so now going into the day, I can obviously tell that like shorts could cook because we've just expanded for so long. We have this huge expansion candle that's in equilibrium. Now we're on the daily chart. If you look at that, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days of expansion. Past 2 days having been heavy expansion. So now if I take this, like I'm going to at least want to see some sort of retracement back into this volume imbalance. So I'm not gonna like force that today. Yeah, I'm not gonna force that today, but I do want to see that happen. I do want to see that run into and as we come into market open today, watch this SMT that we got. That was ripped as. Actually, this is low-key like a double SMT. I mean, when you mark it out, it's 2-stage SMT. We have weaker asset right here, so yeah.